Here with Ron Darling now on MLB Tonight, a conversation as we continue. So a man with eclectic tastes and an eclectic background, I should say. Because Ronnie, French-Canadian father, Hawaiian-Chinese mother. But as you've joked, listen, I never even saw a palm tree or a wave because you moved from Hawaii when you were relatively young to Massachusetts. What was it like with that family background growing up in Massachusetts at that time?
It was an issue, Adnan. It was going from a place that had a lot of relatives, a lot of family, to a place that really was, all my friends were Irish Catholic or Italian Catholic. That's who I grew up with. No one looked like me in the entire place. And I remember that my family would really kind of, we'd meet out and meet the other Asian families that were there, and we'd end up spending a lot of weekends with those families.
Right. And what was that like with your friends? Did you find it was difficult to assimilate, or was it a non-issue? Ron's mom's different than ours, but it's not a big deal.
It was a very hard thing. I remember I've been wearing glasses since I was 6 years old, and I wore mine today because it reminds me, when I was 6 years old, I remember the kids used to start with the, hey, are you the driver for Mr. Magoo? You know, that kind of stuff. And you hear that as a young kid, and, you know, your self-worth goes down and all those kind of things. But at the same time, you know, kind of makes you tougher.
No question. And then when you're playing baseball, again, there's not a lot of Asians playing baseball at that time. So what was that like when, like you said, maybe in school you stand out, and then on the diamond you also stand out?
Well, my house just loved baseball so much. And my mom was a big fan of Mike Lum. And Mike Lum was from the island, and he played with the Giants and the Braves. So if the Giants or the Braves were ever on, we had to watch that game.
Right.
And Mike Lum, if you remember, did more pinch hitting. It didn't always start. So we would watch that entire game just waiting for Mike Lum to maybe hit.
Right.
I know that as I got older, and Len Secada was with the Orioles and others, it was always must-see TV for my family because it was, you know, a role model for me, who was an aspiring baseball player.
Once you get to Yale, you have tremendous success. You go to the major leagues, obviously have success. Was there mentors along the way, anyone of Asian descent who could kind of reach out to you and offer some tips?
Yeah, great question. My first friends when I got to Yale were ASA, Asian American Students Association. And I'll never forget, you know, when you get to college, everyone feels the same, right?
Sure.
You feel lonely and you don't have a lot of friends. But I had my football friends, but really no one on campus. And they welcomed me with open arms. And I got to know a lot of people that I never would have gotten to know on the campus. And it just made the transition much smoother. And it also was the first time that I started to think about things as a young, you know, with a mom that's Hawaiian and Chinese. When you grew up in Millbury, Massachusetts, you know, which is outside of Worcester, in that part of the world, you don't think about any of those things. You don't think of the politics of it. You don't think about the social aspects of it. And when I got to Yale and all those incredibly intelligent people, and then being part of that ASA community, it really started to raise my awareness to not only where I was, but who I was and where I was going.
Yeah, college is so important because, like you said, you feel on the outside, but then you actually find a community. And that's what's so important, is that those are formative years in many ways, and they can help branch you out. How did it impact, like, your thinking? Like you said, you're coming from a place which is fairly tight-knit. How did it impact your world horizons, I should say?
Well, I think it made me think more about, like, who I was. And, you know, I grew up with parents. My mom's mother was Hawaiian. She passed away at her birth, so I never got to know her. My grandfather was Chinese. He kind of left at the same time. So I never really got to know that side of my family. So I did not have those roots as far as stories and all of those things. And, but it made me, I think, after meeting more people that kind of look like me.
Right.
You know, you wanted to search that out and try to find out kind of who you come from and where you belong.
So you're on the Mets, and, you know, I was going to say, there's not too much rabble-rousing when you're a young player, but then again, that 86 Mets team did have some rabble-rousing. But New York, Ronnie, is a very multicultural city. So did that help being a guy, hey, with a Hawaiian Chinese mother? I'm in a city where everyone's got different backgrounds.
Yeah, there was incredible people that came into my life. I remember one of the most famous watercolor Asian painters, Diana Khan, was nice enough to come into my life and took over kind of like as my New York surrogate mom. She was just so sweet and caring, and that really helped me with the transition. She was so intelligent, had amazing thoughts on a lot of things that I got a little woke, you know, and that was good too. And she was the one that really said, you know, you have to go to Hawaii where you were born. I had never been back there. So I took one winter and went back there, and I was like, whoa, everybody here looks like me.
Yeah.
And this is a cool place to be. So every step of the way, it seemed like I just had another surrogate angel on my shoulder that helped me along.
Listen, you follow the news, you see what's happening in the world. What's been your reaction to see the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes?
Well, it makes me sick to my stomach. It really does, especially with so much of the hatred against some of the older members of our community who, you know, don't have a way to defend themselves. It just makes you so emotional to see that happen. And, you know, we live in a country for, you know, there's many reasons. People argue what the reasons are. But the thing that is known is that we do live in a time where it's open season, it seems, on people to act out in whatever way they want to act out. And that's resulted in so much violence against older Asian Americans, anyone that's Asian American. And I hope that with this show and awareness that all of us can somehow get together and do something that will help.
And that's what I was going to close with.
Yeah.
For Major League Baseball specifically, what can they do in terms of raising awareness, having more Asian Americans in baseball? Any ideas?
Well, my first idea is I put my hat in the ring. Anyone needs me to do anything, I will be 100% behind it. But I think it's getting out to the community. It's doing what a lot of ball players did for me when I was a kid, and that is to ensure that any dream you had was worthwhile.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I always dreamed of being a quarterback. How are you going to be a quarterback? Well, Roman Gabriel was a quarterback, and I checked and he was Filipino, and I was like, boy, it all works. It all works. But I do think at some point, if players feel the need, Asian players feel the need, I think they really don't understand the power that they have in the communities to do great things to maybe change how people think about Asian Americans.
Yeah, and it's not just sports. As you know, I remember we talked a couple years ago, I said, best movie you saw? I said, The Farewell, which is a movie about Chinese culture, and the grandmother is passing away, and rather than tell her that, they're telling her it's a celebration. There's actually a wedding happening. So you know what? That's a good indication of what Chinese culture can be specifically, and when people see that kind of movie, I think it overcomes ignorance. It allows people to open their minds. Tolerance is the most important thing.
Yeah, and there's no celebrating today. You know, there's a lot of dire news. So I'm hoping that I and others can make a difference so that we are celebratory at some point.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is it's not just what you say, it's how you carry yourself. And you're always a person of integrity, of kindness, benevolence, and thanks for your time, and thanks for your thoughts, and thanks for being you.
Thanks, Don.
That's Ron Darling.